The recreational hall fell silent when Commander Tai entered. His silver skin caught the light strangely, the subtle patterns across his face shifting as he surveyed the room. Most of the soldiers straightened their postures instinctively, a gesture of respect for the most decorated officer in the 12th Battalion of the Galactic Coalition Forces. At ease, Ta said, his translator giving his voice a melodic quality despite his species' natural clicking speech pattern. He moved with deliberate grace toward the open seat at the briefing table, where aliens from 7 different worlds had gathered for their upcoming mission. Officer Jun, a blue-scaled Erosian with remarkable aim, leaned toward his colleague. "Is it true," he whispered, "that he's from Sector 8? Lieutenant Han, whose insectoid features betrayed no emotion, gave the equivalent of a nod. Fought in 6 major campaigns. Single-handedly defended the quantum gate at Proxima. They say he can survive in vacuum for over an hour without equipment." "Impossible," scoffed Jun. The stories about Commander Tai had spread through the ranks like wildfire. Some said he once killed 30 enemy soldiers with just a broken communication device. Others claimed he survived 3 weeks on a toxic planet with no protective gear. Few knew which stories were true, but all knew one thing. Ta got results. General Jin began the briefing, his holographic display showing the hostile moon they would be infiltrating. The surface glowed red with radiation warnings and atmospheric hazards. "We need to extract the ambassador within 48 hours, Jin explained. "The diplomatic vessel was shot down here." He pointed to a crater surrounded by enemy fortifications. "Standard approach would take us through these defense systems," Captain Du said, highlighting a path through the least defended sector. Commander Tai studied the map silently, then reached forward and traced a finger directly through the densest concentration of enemy forces. "We go here," he said simply. The room erupted in protests. "The radiation alone would kill most species," argued Lieutenant Han. "The gravity well of that entry point is twice standard," added Medical Officer Sung. "The physical strain would crush bones." "With respect, Commander," said Captain Mina, her crystalline form glittering with concern, "most species couldn't survive those conditions." "Mine can," Tay replied simply. The room fell silent again as everyone contemplated his words. Tai was not known for boasting or taking unnecessary risks. If he said it could be done, most believed him. "The enemy expects us to avoid that sector precisely because of the conditions," Ta continued. "Their defenses are minimal. We can be on the ground and at the ambassador's location before they realize we've landed." General Jin nodded slowly. "I trust the commander's assessment. Make the necessary preparations." Later, as the meeting adjourned and officers filed out to prepare for the mission, smaller groups formed in the corners of the hall. Most discussed the technical aspects of the upcoming drop, but a few gathered around Jin as he asked questions about everyone's home planets. "The acid lakes of Meron IV make for excellent defensive positions," boasted Officer Jun. "My people evolved in the methane storms of the Cygnus cluster," added Lieutenant Han. "We can sense pressure changes 3 days before they happen." Each species had their story, their evolutionary pride. When Jin turned to Commander Tai, the question seemed routine. "And you, Commander, where did your people evolve?" The other officers leaned in slightly. Despite Ta's legendary status, few knew much about his origins. He rarely spoke of personal matters. "I was born on Earth," Ta said casually, as if mentioning the cafeteria menu. The room went completely still. Even the ambient machinery seemed to quiet. Several officers took involuntary steps backward. "You're from the Deathworld," whispered Mina, her crystalline structure paling to a ghostly white. Ta looked confused by their reaction. "Yes, 3rd planet from a yellow star. Sol system. But Earth is quarantined," stammered Jin. "No species has official contact with." "I left before the quarantine," Tai explained. "My family was part of a research exchange. When the Coalition enacted the isolation protocol, I was already enrolled in the military academy." "The stories," June whispered to Han. They're true then. Tad looked at them curiously. What stories? That your world has moving ground that swallows cities whole, said Han. That water falls from your sky as solid crystals. That your atmosphere regularly tries to destroy your settlements with spinning wind columns. You mean earthquakes, snow, and tornadoes. Ta laughed. Those are just normal weather patterns and geological events. Nothing special. Nothing special, repeated Jin in disbelief. Commander, the conditions you just described would be extinction-level events on most worlds. Ta shrugged. Perhaps that explains why I'm suited for this mission. As the others stared at him with new understanding, Ta stood. We drop in 6 hours. I suggest everyone gets some rest. He left them there, his silver skin catching the light one last time before the door closed behind him. The emergency shelter glowed dimly as the 6 surviving members of the squad huddled around the thermal generator. Their dropship had been shot down over the frozen wastes of Proxima IV, and extraction was still 12 hours away. Outside, the wind howled like a wounded animal, driving ice crystals against the shelter's thin walls. At least we're alive, said Lieutenant Da, her feathered crest flattened against her head to conserve heat. Thanks to the commander, added Captain Mina, her crystalline form reflecting the generator's orange glow. No one else could have landed a failing ship that smoothly. Commander Tai sat slightly apart from the others, calmly repairing a damaged communication unit. His silver skin showed no sign of discomfort despite the temperature. The shelter's internal reading showed -40 degrees, yet he had given his thermal blanket to Surgeon Hyun, whose species evolved on a jumbo world. Tell us about Earth, Commander, said Hyun, his 4 arms wrapped tightly around his torso for warmth. Is it true your people deliberately ingest toxins for pleasure? The question hung in the air. Since the revelation of Ta's origin 2 days ago, the squad had been curious but hesitant to ask directly about the legendary Deathworld. Commander Ta smiled, the expression strange on his silver face. We call it drinking. Alcohol temporarily impairs our nervous systems, but we enjoy the sensation, voluntarily impairing your cognitive functions, gasped Lieutenant Da, her feathered crest rising in alarm. For entertainment. That's nothing, Ta continued, setting down the communication unit. Some of us jump from high altitudes with only fabric to slow our descent. But surely that's only military training, asked Jin, the oldest member of the squad and most familiar with combat techniques. No, we call it skydiving. It's a recreational activity. Children sometimes do it for birthday celebrations. A collective shudder passed through the alien soldiers. General Jin stared at Todd with new understanding. The human wasn't boasting or exaggerating. He was simply stating facts about his homeworld. Is that why you didn't seem concerned about our drop through the radiation belt? Asked Mina. Because danger is entertainment to humans. Not exactly, Ta said thoughtfully. We respect danger, but we're used to pushing boundaries. On Earth, people climb frozen mountains without breathing equipment just because the mountains exist. Without breathing equipment, Hyun repeated, all 4 hands clutching his chest as if the very thought made it hard to breathe. Some humans swim in water so cold it would kill them in minutes if they stayed too long, Ta continued. Others run distances that would exhaust most large mammals on our planet. We call it a marathon. But why? Asked Da. What evolutionary advantage does this provide? Tai laughed. None, probably. We just like the challenge. And your dwelling structures? Probed Mina cautiously. Is it true they're built in zones prone to geological instability? Some of our largest cities sit directly on fault lines. Yes. San Francisco, Tokyo, Mexico City, all built where the planet's crust regularly shifts and breaks. How do you survive? Whispered Hyun. We adapt, said Tai simply. We build stronger. We prepare for disaster. Lieutenant Da's feathers trembled slightly. Is it true that your world has giant spinning wind formations that destroy everything in their path? Tornadoes. Yes, and hurricanes too. Massive storm systems that can cover areas larger than some of your home planets. Yet you stay, asked Jin. You could have built settlements elsewhere. Humans don't abandon places easily, Ta said, his voice soft now. We grow attached to our homes, no matter how dangerous. Some communities have rebuilt after disasters dozens of times in the same location. That's not rational, stated Mina, her crystal structure pulsing with confusion. No, agreed Ta. But it's human. Jin moved closer to the generator, his scaled hands stretching toward the heat. What about the wildlife? We've heard stories. Some true, some exaggerated, Tai admitted. We have predators that can tear apart vehicles, insects that can kill with a single sting, plants that digest animals, microscopic organisms that have killed more humans than all our wars combined. And yet your species became dominant, Jin observed. We're adaptable, Ta said. And stubborn. Very stubborn. The squad fell silent, each member trying to imagine a world where all these threats existed together, where children played under skies that might bring ice crystals or devastating storms, where the ground itself might suddenly open up. Their contemplation was interrupted when the perimeter alarm chimed softly. Jin checked the scanner, and his expression darkened. Enemy patrol. At least 30 soldiers, heading this way. Tai stood immediately, gathering his equipment with practiced efficiency. Perimeter breach in approximately 8 minutes. We need to move. Move. Into that, exclaimed Hyun, pointing toward the shelter wall where the howling storm raged. We'll freeze to death. No, said Ta calmly, already disassembling the thermal generator to prevent it from falling into enemy hands. We'll use the storm as cover. They won't expect us to go out there. Because it's suicide, Dab protested. Ta smiled again, but this time there was something else in his expression, something primal and confident that reminded them all of his Deathworld origins. For their species, maybe, he said, not for mine. The ice field exploded with plasma fire, bright flashes lighting up the frozen landscape like lightning. Commander Ta ducked behind a jagged formation, his silver skin reflecting the blue glow of enemy weapons. The rest of the squad was pinned down nearby, their breathing equipment creating small clouds in the freezing air. Split up, ordered Tai as another volley of shots melted the ice above them. Meet at extraction point Gamma in 10 hours. No one questioned the order. In the 2 days since their ship crashed, they had learned to trust the human survival instincts. The squad scattered in different directions, using the storm and darkness as cover. Captain Mina was the last to move, her crystalline body less suited to quick movement across ice. As she stood to run, an enemy shot hit the ice formation above her. A massive chunk broke free and crashed down, striking her directly. Her crystalline form cracked slightly, and she collapsed unconscious. Without hesitation, Tai doubled back. The enemy soldiers were closing in, their heat sensors sweeping the area. He reached Mina and checked her vital signs. Still alive, but completely unresponsive. He hoisted her crystalline form onto his shoulders, the weight crushing for any normal being. Mina's species was dense. She weighed nearly 3 times what her size suggested. Just like carrying my brother after football practice. Ta muttered to himself, adjusting her weight as he began trudging through the deepening snow. For 3 hours, he pushed forward against the howling wind. The temperature dropped further, reaching levels that would kill most species within minutes of exposure. Ta's fingers and face burned with frostbite, but he continued methodically, always moving, always scanning for shelter. Mina's unconscious form grew heavier with each step. When he spotted a small opening in an ice wall, Ta carefully maneuvered toward it. It was a shallow cave, barely large enough for both of them. He gently placed Mina against the back wall, then immediately began to work. Using only a standard-issue combat knife, Ta hollowed out chambers in the ice, scraping and carving with practiced efficiency. He created a small ventilation shaft that allowed airflow without letting in the direct wind. He fashioned primitive tools from ice and the few supplies in his pack. Within an hour, the small cave had become a functional shelter. As he worked, Ta grimaced when he tried to use his left hand. During the escape, his index finger had been dislocated, bent at an unnatural angle. Without pausing, he gripped the finger firmly, took a deep breath, and snapped it back into place with a sickening pop. He flexed it twice, nodded with satisfaction, and continued working. When Mina regained consciousness 2 hours later, she watched in horrified fascination as he calmly tended to his other injuries, cleaning frostbitten areas, applying medicinal paste to burns, and stitching a deep cut on his arm using thread from his own uniform. "How are you not in shock?" she asked weakly, her crystalline voice crackling slightly from her damaged form. "Earth has many predators," he explained without looking up, now working on a primitive trap at the cave entrance. Being injured and continuing to function is a basic survival skill. "Even for your young?" Mina asked, trying to sit up. "Especially for our young. On Earth, children learn to handle pain early. We have a saying, rub some dirt on it and keep playing." Mana's crystal structure vibrated in what Tai had learned was their version of a shutter. The trap at the entrance was simple but clever, a tripwire connected to a small avalanche mechanism. Tai helped Mina to stand, then showed her something remarkable, a narrow tunnel he had carved into the ice wall at the back of the cave. "How did you make this?" she asked, examining the smooth walls of the passage. "Body heat mostly," he said. "And the knife. Humans are good at getting through tight spaces." They crawled through the narrow tunnel just as Mina's sensitive hearing picked up enemy soldiers approaching the cave entrance. As they emerged from the other end, Tai activated the trap remotely. They heard muffled shouts and the rumble of collapsing ice. When enemy forces tracked them to the cave, they found it empty. As they searched inside, the ice ceiling, carefully weakened by Ta, collapsed, trapping them. "That won't hold them long," Ta said, helping Mina across the broken ice field. "But it gives us a head start." They trudged through the snowstorm for hours, Ta constantly checking Mina's condition and sharing his remaining thermal supplies with her. Despite her injuries, she kept pace, inspired by the humans' relentless determination. "My people believed humans were myths," Mina confessed as they pushed toward the extraction point. "Stories to frighten new recruits." "Is that so?" Tai asked, his silver skin now coated with frost-resistant oil he'd extracted from local flora. He had fashioned crude snowshoes for both of them from parts of his pack. "They said humans evolved on a planet that tried to kill them every day, so they became impossible to kill." She paused, studying his frostbitten but determined face. "I think I believe those stories now." Tai smiled slightly. "We're not impossible to kill. We're just really, really hard to kill." He pointed ahead where a faint light could be seen through the storm. "There. The extraction point. We made it." As they approached the rendezvous location, they saw the rest of the squad had already arrived, looking battered but alive. When they saw Tai carrying Mina across the final stretch, they stared in silent awe. "What?" Tai asked, as he gently set Mina down near the emergency beacon. "Haven't you ever seen someone go for a walk before?" Back at Coalition headquarters, Commander Te's exploits became legend. Stories spread through the ranks like wildfire, despite official attempts to minimize them. Soldiers whispered about how he carried Captain Mina for miles through a killing blizzard. They talked about the clever ice cave trap that buried 15 enemy soldiers. Some claimed he drank toxic water to survive when supplies ran out. "Did you hear? He fixed his own broken leg with just a knife and some tape," one young cadet told another in the mess hall. "I heard he can see in complete darkness," another replied. "My squad leader says humans eat poison for fun." The stories grew with each telling. Some officers worried about the effect on morale. Others saw the value in having such a legendary figure among their ranks. 3 weeks after the Proxima IV mission, a high-level security briefing was called. The Coalition's top military leaders gathered in the Central Command Chamber. Holographic displays showed recent battle reports from across the galaxy. Commander Ta sat quietly at the far end of the table, his silver skin freshly polished for the formal occasion. General Wook, a respected veteran with blue tentacles and 6 eyes, openly questioned the reports about Ta's exploits on Proxima IV. With respect, he said, his tentacles gesturing dismissively, these accounts must be exaggerated. No single species could possess such versatility and resilience. It defies evolutionary logic. Several other officers nodded in agreement. The stories did seem impossible. Commander Tae's service record is exemplary, countered Captain Mina, who had insisted on attending despite her still healing crystal structure. I witnessed his abilities firsthand. Eyewitness accounts in extreme situations are notoriously unreliable, General Wook replied, especially when one's life has been saved by the subject in question. Admiral Sun, her holographic form flickering slightly as she transmitted from the flagship orbiting the planet, had remained silent until now. Perhaps a demonstration is in order, she suggested. The room fell quiet as everyone considered her words. What sort of demonstration? Asked General Jin. A controlled test of Commander Tae's adaptability, Admiral Sun explained. Something that would validate or disprove these stories once and for all. 2 days later, they arranged a training exercise, though everyone knew it was really a test. 20 of the Coalition's elite soldiers, including Ta, were dropped into a simulation chamber programmed to rapidly shift between environmental extremes. The chamber was massive, a dome-shaped room with walls that could transform completely. Hundreds of officers watched from the observation gallery above. The exercise was simple: remain in the chamber as long as possible while conditions changed. It began with moderate challenges: increased gravity, minor temperature shifts. All 20 soldiers handled these conditions easily. Then the real test began. Toxic atmosphere filled the chamber. 3 soldiers immediately signaled to exit. The remaining 17 donned breathing apparatus and continued. The gravity doubled, then tripled. 4 more soldiers collapsed under their own weight and were removed. The temperature plummeted to freezing levels. Combat armor provided some protection, but soon fingers and limbs became too numb to function properly. One by one, the elite soldiers withdrew as conditions became unbearable. Crushing pressure, scorching heat, freezing cold, radiation levels that should have been instantly debilitating. After 2 hours, only 5 remained. After 3 hours, just 2. Commander Tai and a reptilian soldier from a hardy desert world. When the chamber simulated the crushing depths of an ocean trench, the reptilian finally signaled defeat. After 4 hours, only Tai remained, calmly adapting to each new hell the chamber produced. He removed pieces of his protective gear when they became more hindrance than help. He adjusted his breathing pattern for different atmospheric conditions. He found ways to use the changing environment to his advantage, cooling himself with ice during heat waves, absorbing radiation to stay warm during cold spells. In the observation gallery, the silence was profound. Even General Wook's tentacles had stopped their usual nervous movement as he stared in disbelief. Enough, Admiral Sun finally ordered. End the exercise. When they finally opened the chamber, Tae emerged looking only mildly inconvenienced. His silver skin was discolored in places, and he limped slightly, but he walked out under his own power and saluted crisply. How? Demanded General Wook, genuinely disturbed. How is this possible? You faced conditions that would kill most species instantly. Earth has all these conditions, Tai explained simply. Not everywhere, and not all at once, but we evolved to handle rapid changes and extreme variations. Our planet has deserts that burn by day and freeze by night, oceans that can swallow cities, winds that can flatten buildings. But the radiation levels alone should have. On Earth, we live with background radiation constantly. Some areas have high natural radiation. We've even had nuclear accidents that made entire regions uninhabitable for other species. Yet humans still sneak into those zones to live. The gathered officers stared at him. This wasn't just about physical resilience anymore. It was about a mindset completely foreign to them. "You're not just survivors of a death world," whispered Admiral Sun in realization. "You're its masters." Ta shook his head slightly. "Not masters. Partners maybe. Earth tries to kill us. We adapt. It tries harder. We adapt again. It's an endless dance." "A dance with death," muttered General Wook. "We just call it living," Tay replied. The Coalition war chamber buzzed with tension as reports came in from all fronts. The massive view screen showed red spreading across the galaxy map like a disease. The Void Collective, a hive consciousness of machine-organic hybrids, had adapted to all Coalition weapons technology. 16 worlds had fallen in less than a month. "Sector 7 has gone dark," reported General Jin, his scaled face grim. "We've lost contact with 3 more colony worlds." Admiral Sun's hologram stood at the center of the chamber, her usually calm features tight with worry. "The collective absorbs and counters our technology faster than we can develop it," she explained gravely. "We need unconventional solutions." All eyes turned to Commander Tai, who sat quietly at the far end of the table. Since his demonstration in the simulation chamber 2 weeks ago, his status had changed. He was no longer just a decorated officer. He was a symbol of something the Coalition had feared for generations: human potential. "You're suggesting we recruit more humans," he said. It wasn't a question. The room erupted in protests. "The Coalition has kept Earth under quarantine for generations," objected General Wook, his tentacles waving in agitation. "For good reason. Introducing a Deathworld species into galactic society could save it," interrupted Sun. "We need creatures evolved to face constant threat and change. We need humans." The debate raged for hours. Some officers feared that humans would be worse than the Void Collective, an unpredictable force that might one day turn against the Coalition. Others believed that without human help, there would be no Coalition left to protect. In the end, Admiral Sun's argument prevailed. 3 days later, a Coalition diplomatic vessel entered Earth's solar system, broadcasting peaceful intentions. The response was swift. 27 human vessels appeared from hidden positions around their world, weapons technology centuries more primitive than Coalition standard, but positioned with perfect tactical precision. "They've been preparing for us," murmured Captain Mina in admiration as she watched the tactical display. Even in isolation, they expected threats from beyond. On the bridge of the diplomatic vessel, Commander Ta stood in his formal uniform, silver skin polished to a mirror shine. It had been 30 years since he had seen his homeworld. The blue-green planet filled the view screen, beautiful and deadly, a perfect summary of its dominant species. "They're requesting that you speak first," said Admiral Sun, "as proof of our intentions." Tai nodded and stepped forward. In simple, clear words, he explained who he was and why the Coalition had come. He spoke of the Void Collective threat and the desperate need for human adaptability. When he finished, there was a long silence from Earth. Finally, a response came. "We've been waiting for this day." The diplomatic meeting took place on a neutral station in Earth orbit. Human Ambassador Sion, a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, stood before the Coalition Council, unimpressed by their advanced technology and towering architecture. "For centuries, we knew we weren't alone," she stated calmly. "We prepared accordingly. Now you need what that preparation has created: soldiers who think beyond technology, who expect the unexpected, who thrive in chaos." The Coalition leaders were shocked to learn that humans had detected their observation satellites decades ago, but had chosen not to react. They had used the quarantine to develop their own technologies and strategies, always preparing for the day when the stars would become accessible. "We are ready to join your fight," Ambassador Sion concluded, "but as partners, not subjects, equals in the Coalition." Within weeks, human officers were integrated into Coalition forces. Their training methods shocked their alien counterparts. They deliberately practiced with broken equipment. They trained without reliable communications. They simulated worst-case scenarios as standard procedure. Their primitive but unpredictable tactics confounded the Void Collective. Their ability to function without advanced technology proved decisive in battle after battle. Where coalition forces had been losing ground for months, the tide began to turn. Most surprising to the coalition forces was the human attitude toward danger. They joked in the face of death. They took impossible risks and somehow survived. They treated injuries that would sideline other species as minor inconveniences. 6 months after first contact, the Void Collective retreated from Coalition space. The war wasn't over, but for the first time, there was hope. At Coalition headquarters, new recruits now gathered around veterans, eager to hear stories of the human soldiers among them. The Deathworlders who could breathe poison, drink acid, break and repair their own bodies, and smile through it all. Commander Ta, now promoted to general, watched from a distance as Lieutenant Jun told wide-eyed cadets about the time he'd seen a human soldier continue fighting with multiple fractures, using only primitive adrenaline and what they called stubbornness. And then, Jun was saying, the human just put the bone back in place herself and kept firing. No medical unit, no pain suppressors, nothing. The cadets gasped appropriately. One of them noticed Ta listening and approached nervously. "Sir," the young reptilian cadet said with a salute, "are the stories true? Can humans really do all these things?" Ta considered the question carefully. Humans had become something between heroes and monsters in coalition culture, figures of both admiration and fear. The truth was more complex. "Some are exaggerated," he said finally with a small smile, "but not by as much as you think." As he walked away, Ta glanced out the viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Void Collective was regrouping, adapting to human tactics just as it had adapted to coalition technology. But this time, they faced an enemy that had evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day. An enemy that called that world home. Retriclad can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.